Hey, Foundry Groups, it is good to be with you guys again this week. I hope you're enjoying fall as we are going full steam into October at this point. A quick announcement before we go into the message summary. We've got a groups mixer that's coming up here in the middle of October, and we would love for you to think about either A, if there's somebody you'd like to invite into your group. It doesn't even need to be somebody that we tell you is going in. If you're looking around when you're in worship and you're like, hey, I think we should ask them. See, have a conversation, see if you've got space to invite somebody. And also, maybe you've got people in your group that are feeling the tug to lead their own group. We'd love to have a conversation with you about what that would look like because we are going to be starting a bunch of new groups this fall, and we need leaders, and we want to find spots for people to be able to gain community with each other like you're doing right now. So have that conversation with each other. If anyone wants to step forward into that, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to walk you through what that could look like. Now into the message summary. We are looking at Listen. That is our series right now, specifically at the prophet Jeremiah. And this is such a fascinating book because he's actually known as the weeping prophet, which is just kind of devastating, right? But he is known as this because he actually weeps with the people. He grieves with them because he knows the message from God is true, but it is hard. And he gives a big challenge to the people of Israel. But the book of Jeremiah is not without hope. Jeremiah actually ends his book with the promise of God's covenant in his people. And you may be familiar with Jeremiah 29:11 because it is really quoted quite a bit in throughout our culture. It says this, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to bless you and give you a future and a hope." And we use that throughout the church. We use that almost as a verse to lean on even when it is hard. And Jeremiah gave that verse to the people to say, hey, God is still for you and you will prosper if you continue to lean onto him. Jeremiah lived among a people who they had this hard challenge in their lives because they worshiped a false god named Baal. And Baal worship is actually just demon worship at its core. Now, two things that we can see from this Baal worship that Jeremiah points out. Baal worship feeds in insecurity, doubt, and panic. And Baal worship also produces lust, greed, and panic. And when we split that apart and take a step back and say, okay, this is what Baal worship offers us. There's something different that Jeremiah points out that the worship of God offers the people that they so often miss. The worship of God springs from humility, trust, and faith. You get how the Baal worship was insecurity, doubt, and panic. God brings humility, trust, and faith. And the worship of God produces love, hope, and peace. And I just think that this is something that was spoken to these people from Jeremiah, but it's also a word that we need to hear as a church too, that we can so often be just bombarded with what the culture is trying to tell us, and yet God says, hey, I bring hope, love, and peace. Just accept who I am and be a part of my life. So that is a quick recap. We're going to jump right into groups questions and a quick icebreaker to start off because we actually last weekend went to Cranes. We did our yearly Cranes apple picking, and it was so good. McKenna's just to the age where she's starting to pull all the apples. We just had a riot. So here's a question in this. Share your favorite way to eat apples. Share your favorite way to eat apples. Mine would be dipped in caramel and chocolate and just lathered in. Taking an apple and making it the most unhealthy. That's really what I would like to do with one. So share, what's your favorite way to eat an apple? And we'll start into groups content. All right, I want you to start by reading Jeremiah 1 and then ask this question. What surprised you about Jeremiah's call? Jeremiah 17, 7 through 10 says this, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind." A few questions that come out of this. How does this verse describe a person who trusts in the Lord? In what ways does this sound like you or not like you? I want a quick look back to verse 9. It says this, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" Now, the question in this is, what do you think this verse means? Thinking back to Eric's message this weekend, what did Eric say that Baal worship feeds on? And what does this Baal worship produce? And let's take a look at our own culture right here now and today. What kinds of false gods or demons does this world worship that sounds familiar to Baal worship? When we think about our last question with what is around in this culture that looks similar to demons, I want you to think about those things and think about the insecurity, the doubt, and the panic that come from what culture says is valuable for us. How can we avoid that? How does worshiping God show humility, trust, and faith? Why do these things matter? And in what ways do those things produce love, joy, and peace? All right, groups, that sums up our questions for this week. As always, take some time to fill out prayer requests, talk about concerns, and just even care needs that you guys have going on in your life. And make sure to do the attendance. We love to just be able to know who's involved in groups, and we want to make sure that we can care for you in any way that you might need. If you got some time and want to dive into the digging deeper, it goes into that Jeremiah 29:11 passage where it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." And I don't know if there's much more comforting than that out of Jeremiah, that God knows the plans for us regardless of what we think, right? It's like, man, how many times have we thought, what's next? What does this mean for my life? What am I doing here? God knows. God knows the plans, and be rest assured in that. So if you have time, there's a lot of questions in there that you can dive into. I'd strongly encourage it. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you soon.